Good afternoon, this is Peter Towers from ESS BIZTOOLS. Welcome to this webinar on ESS BIZGRANTS. I hope you're having a wonderful day. We're just waiting for the remainder of the people participating today to log on, and then we'll be underway. Just while we're waiting, if you have any questions on any aspects of the ESS BIZGRANTS system or government grants in particular, please type in your question, and in webinar jargon raise your hand, and I will answer your questions later in the webinar. Okay, well, we'll get started. There's a few people still not registered, but it's past the time where we advertise, so we'll get started. So welcome, everyone. I'll apologise in advance for my voice. I have some sinus at present, and it has affected my voice. I hope you can bear with me for the next 30 minutes or so as we go through looking at ESS BIZGRANTS. Why are we interested in business grants? Well, we have a testimonial on the right-hand side of the screen that you can start reading at present, which was prepared by David Smith, former president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants and currently the managing director of Smith Inc. 2020. David was one of the persons a few years ago that convinced me that accountants needed a tool to assist them to identify government grants for their clients, but without the accountant having to become an expert in the government grant process. And that's what we've attempted to do, to give accountants the tools to use to be able to identify grants that your small, medium enterprise clients might be eligible for, without you necessarily having to become experts in the individual government grants. There's nothing wrong with becoming experts, of course, and if you wish, you should be having a good look at the various grants, but it can be quite a time-consuming and tedious job becoming the expert in the grants. You don't need to do that. We've tried to do that for you in presenting this product. We have within the system a case study which will give you an overview of how ESS BIZGRANTS operates. This is a hypothetical, of course, that you can utilize to understand better how the system works and give you an appreciation of the type of data that can be produced. We have news contained on the site that you could look at if you want a bit more background as to the reasons for various procedural matters relative to grants. Our system covers federal, state and territory grants, so there's a lot of them, and we are concentrating on the grants that apply to small, medium enterprises. So we'll go to the login because we're going to go onto the site and show you things. So obviously I've already logged in, and we will go to a client profile, and we'll go to a new profile. So when you first go onto the site, you can type in the name of your client. You can use a code if you wish. I'm going to call this business Western Fabricators. You then have to identify what type of entity, because government grants vary on the entity. The most popular entity is a company. In fact, I don't know of a government grant that a company is not eligible to apply for. But some of these other entity groups will only be applicable in some grants. So we've decided that this business, its name is Western Fabricators Proprietary Limited, so it's a company. Do you export products? They do a bit of exporting, so we'll tick yes. Do you import products? They do import some products, so we'll tick yes. How many employees have they got? We've graded the number of employees dependent on the type of questions that are asked on employee numbers by the various grants. These people have 25 employees, so we tick 20 to 200. Do you have an ABN? You need to answer yes to that question. Otherwise, the system will not show you any grants because these are grants for businesses. How many years have you been operating? There's not many grants left for startups, and a number of the grants have got periods of time. This business has been going for 8 years, so we click over 3 years. The annual turnover, there's various turnover levels mentioned in the grants that are in our system. This business has got a turnover of $8 million, so we're going to click on the 1.5 to 20 million category. Obviously, there are other categories that you could have clicked on. Are you registered for GST? You need to answer yes to that question. Are you tax exempt? If you answer yes, you won't be shown any grants because this is a system for small, medium enterprises, and theoretically everyone will ultimately be paying some tax. And are you involved in research and development? We're going to answer yes to that. This business does do research and development, but it's also interested in some of the other grants that might be available because of the consequences of them having undertaken research and development. Now that's the initial questions that you're going to have to answer. If you were doing that in your office and you had one of your team members who has some familiarity with a client, you don't need too much to fill that form in. We'll take 2 to 3 minutes. So we'll save that. You can go back and edit it. We'll then put in the address, and this business is in Argenton, a suburb of Newcastle, I've decided. Every time we do one of these, we try to pick a different place around Australia. So welcome to Argenton. And the postcode, I believe, is 2284, so we'll put that in and we then save it. Now what the system then gives us, we can check the details to make sure we're happy with them. That's the profile of this client, Western Fabricators. The address is properly in the city, in the entry, and this is classified. As soon as we put the postcode in, the system classified what part of Australia this suburb was in. It's in part of Newcastle, so it's one of the major cities of Australia. Financial, we're in the segment of having a turnover of 1.5 to 20 million. Remember, I said it was 80 million. It was $8 million. We then need to go to the Business Industry Code. We are using the Australian Taxation Office Business Industry Code. You can type in here a keyword. So I've typed in steel because they're a steel fabricator. Pardon me. And the system has now gone through and identified from the business industry codes the words that have, or the business descriptions that have steel in their name. So you go through this. You can click on each of these if you wish to, or you. So we'll click on this one, 22210. That's the industry code that we're looking for. You could have had some others. They might also do some casting, so we'll put that over there as well. So they're the basic industry codes that we have for this business. They're on blacksmith services as well as fabricated steel fabrication. If you wish to eliminate one, you just click on the red dot and that will remove it for you. If you were uncertain of what the description was and you wanted to check the codes, you could just click here and the system will take you to the Australian Taxation Office Business Industry Code. I presume you're all familiar with these days because you have to put these code numbers into the client's tax return. That's one of the reasons we're using them now. And here you have, of course, the listing of codes. So if you need to, you could go into the system and identify the code and then transfer it back into the ESS BIZGRANTS. Somehow or other I've gone to the wrong area here. Yes, here I am, back in the right area now. So we've gone back into the system. If you knew your client's code, which many of you will, of course, you could just enter the code straight into the system there and add it. So you don't have to go through any of this process. So there's 3 ways of identifying the code. If you know one of the words within the general description of the business that your client operates in, you can type in that word and then click on to search, and the system will search the business industry codes. You can click onto the business industry codes and review them both in alphabetical and then in the industry listings to find the code number. Or if you do know it, you can enter the number directly into the system and then click add, and that will then take you through where we can now do a grant search. So we've clicked search grants, and the system's telling us we've got 8 potential grants for this client. We'll just go through these. There are some apprenticeship incentives. The first 2 apprenticeship incentives are basically available for businesses that meet, in this case, they're available for every business because they're special apprenticeship categories. The Australian Bureau of Statistics is free information. It's available to every business. It used to cost about $8,000 some years ago. Business Growth Grant is the new grant from the Entrepreneurs Infrastructure Program, which in this case applies to manufacturing or manufacturing-related services, and that's the category in which a steel fabricator applies. There's certain inputs to manufacture, some assistance that are available to importers. The Export Market Development Grant is for exporters. Industry Capability Network is a free network whereby you can register the business, and the business is then part of a database that's made available to major developers. And the R&D tax incentive. So if we just go back into these and just have a look at how this might apply, if we click onto the name of any grant, you then get a summary sheet which tells you what it's all about. If we go to funding, it will tell you the funding that your client will get if they employ an apprentice with a disability. If you want to understand a bit more about what this grant applies to, you click on Application Toolkit, and then you can click on the paper that's there. And this is a paper that's part of ESS BIZTOOLS. It's incorporated within ESS BIZGRANTS. That gives you an overview of how the apprenticeship scheme works in Australia. So you might say that's very good. And we've then got to answer some additional criteria because there are questions for every grant to try to narrow down further to determine whether your client might be eligible. Are you proposing to employ an apprentice, trainee who has a disability and undertake a certificate? We answer yes. Now what's going to happen now? As soon as we answered yes, which was the correct answer, and in some cases no is the correct answer, apply now will then appear if you've answered the questions correctly. If we click onto there, that will take us to that's the URL that will take us to the government's website on the apprenticeship scheme, which will tell you the closest apprenticeship organisation that you can approach to discuss with them the engagement of an apprentice with a disability. Well, we don't need to do that. If we hit close, The system is now going to update and tell you whether that particular grant is one that your client might be eligible. So what the system's done is now changed the pending grants from 8 to 7. And if we go into potentially eligible, the apprenticeship incentive for an apprentice with a disability is now included. So if we go back to pending, we might just have a look at the skill-based apprenticeship. It basically works the same way, so you just click through. We won't go through this one fully, we'll just show you how that one works. I went too far. I'll just go back into search grants there. Okay, so we're going to go to the business growth grant. It's one you hopefully know something about. This is the new Entrepreneurs Infrastructure Program, which started on the 1st of July this year. To be eligible for this, the business had to have a turnover of $1.5 million to a maximum of 100, has to have an ACN, and it can cover expenditure on a fair amount of work, virtually anything which will improve the business performance of the business. The grant funding is up to $20,000 on a 50% subsidy basis. I believe accountants can do a fair bit of this work on business plans, strategic plans, marketing, debtors review, human resources systems, facilitating management meetings. There are all sorts of jobs that I've undertaken under the predecessor to this program, which was the Enterprise Connect program. And this is very similar. So the grant funding can be up to $20,000 on a 50% basis. If we want to look at the system, we can read a paper about the business growth grant. You can access it. You can print this to give it to your client. So they get a better understanding. There's an interesting list there. They're the industries that the business growth grants apply to. So there's 10 industries there. And when you go into each of these industries, there's numerous business types within those industries that the grant can be applicable to. So you've probably got well over 100 different types of businesses that can receive this grant. It's a very interesting one, and it's a great area for an accountancy firm to start getting involved in business grants and supplying business advisory services. There was another paper there. We'll have a look at that. Now, this is a paper specifically on the manufacturing and manufacturing-related services. So the first one was looking at the overall business growth grant. This one's then zeroing in and looking at manufacturing as a standalone activity. And there's this definition then of manufacturing-related services, which brings in some of these other industry groups that I was referring to a little earlier. I'd be amazed if each of your accountancy businesses hasn't got a number of clients that fit within this particular grant, manufacturing and manufacturing-related services. Okay, so you've read those. You say, yeah, that's okay, we're interested. So you then have to answer some questions. Is the applicant solvent, able to pay their debts when they're due? So you say, if you're happy, the answer is yes, put in yes. Has the business been operating for at least 3 years? Now, it has to be a company when the application's made, but if it was previously a partnership, and it's basically the same people with the partners who are now the shareholders, Oz Industry will accept that. And has the company ever received a business growth grant or a tailored advisory grant under the Enterprise Connect program? Now, if I answer yes to that, that will then show me that the crosses come up after that. We're not eligible because you can't have received a grant under the Enterprise Connect program or under the Business Growth Grant for this purpose, because they're basically the same. So to show you what happens, we haven't got that apply now box hasn't come up. If we close the system out now, and we go back to where we were, we had 8, then 7, now we've got 6. Potentially eligible, we've only got 1. If we go to potentially ineligible, we're listing that business growth grant because we didn't answer the question right. Now if I say, oh, let's go back to that, we made a mistake, you can click back on, you can go through to the additional criteria, you could go back and change that question to no. The system has then brought up apply now, and if we go to apply now, that's the URL for the business growth grant. And if we close now, it will now say that you've transferred that grant is now in potentially eligible, and there's nothing remaining in potentially ineligible. We might just have a look at one more so you can see how this is working. If we go to the Export Market Development Grant, this is a grant for exporters. We said that the Western Seal Fabricators Proprietary Limited were exporting. So if you've got someone that's exporting, you might have a look at it. The grant's quite interesting. It can vary from an amount of $10,000 to $150,000 on a 50% subsidy basis for eligible expenditure. There are 13 main expenditure categories, but there are numerous sub-expenditure categories. This grant covers exports to every country in the world except New Zealand, North Korea and Iran. And apologies to any New Zealand listeners. You're not being singled out and put in the same bracket as North Korea and Iran. You're just treated, in this case, as part of Australia. North Korea and Iran are treated the way they're treated for other reasons, which are pretty obvious. So we might then go and you want to read the paper. So if you want to read a paper, an article on the Export Market Development Grant so you have a better understanding of how it works, you can do so. So there's a full paper which we've prepared for you, which explains how this particular grant program works and summarizes some of the items that are covered. You might want to look at the list of eligible expenditure. So there's a list of some of the eligible expenditure that can be claimed. I said there's 13 main headings and there's quite a number of subheadings. So you might go through that and say, geez, I think the client would get over $20,000 on this expenditure item. So we go back and we then answer some additional criteria. Has the applicant spent money to seek out, create demand, or develop an export market? We say yes. If you're claiming overseas representation or marketing expenses, have you maintained documentary evidence? If you don't, you won't get a claim. So we'll say yes. Are you claiming expenses under the making visits? Have you maintained full trip records? We say yes. Hopefully you've told your clients they've got to do that. If you've claimed 2 export market development grants in prior years, have you discussed with Austrade the export performance test? Well, hopefully we've done that. We answer yes. If you haven't, your client's going to have problems. And there is a possibility that if last year you spent $8,000 and in the year ended 30th of June 2014 your client spent $17,000, the aggregate is $25,000. If this is your first claim under the Export Market Development Grant, they allow you to aggregate those 2 years, and that becomes your first year as a first-time claimant. So we could do that. So we say, yeah, we can do that. And is the business the principal for the export? So as soon as we say there, we got the apply now, we could go to the Austrade website and get the application. Just bear in mind that if you are lodging any applications for the Export Market Development Grant in respect to the year ended 30th of June 2014, then the application has to be lodged with Austrade by the 1st of December 2014. So we'll just go back and check what's happened now. We're now down to 5 pending grants, and in potentially eligible, we have 3 grants that have been listed. Now I can keep on going, but it's the same process. Each grant, you've got a summary sheet. You can get access to the toolkit, which will have the paper, and in some cases we'll have additional information pertaining to that grant. If you're happy with all that and you think that your client could be interested, you can then proceed to the supplementary questions. If you've decided the grant does not suit your client, that's all right. Just move on to the next one. You don't have to do anything about it. It will just remain in the pending column. If anything gets put into the ineligible, if when you have a look at it you're happy that that's the right decision, you don't have to do anything more about that either. You just leave it there in ineligible. It won't affect any of the process. So at this stage we want to print a report for the client. The system will put together the information. So we're preparing a report for Western Fabricators. In your case, if you're a subscriber to the ESS BIZTOOLS, the subscriber's name appears there, not ESS BIZTOOLS. It's dated, today's date, and the report is there for you to view. It gives a brief synopsis of the grant. It indicates the amount of the grant funding. And it's a document that we believe you can, with some pride, present to your client in a very proactive manner to indicate to your client that you have identified a number of grants that you believe the client might be interested in applying for. There is a disclaimer at the bottom of each page which basically protects you and ESS BIZGRANTS, and it indicates that whilst the system has identified that you might be potentially eligible for a grant, you still have to go through a grant application process with the government department somewhere. So then there's the summary on the Export Market Development Grant. So that's the grant report that you can then sit down and have a conversation with your client. Our recommendation as to how you use ESS BIZGRANTS, especially at this time of the year when you are in the process now preparing financial accounts and tax returns for businesses, why not do this process for every one of your business clients as you complete their annual accounts and tax return? One of the junior members of your team could enter that first part of the profile, 2 to 3 minutes that will take to enter. Sure, the ESS BIZGRANTS then needs to be looked at by a more senior member of the team. They can just close off where they're at and someone else can go back in and pick it up from there as they put the client's name into the system. And then you are in a position, in a very proactive manner, when the client comes in to review their financial accounts and tax returns, for you to also be saying to them, we have identified that you might be eligible to apply for these grants. Isn't that a lot better than the client ringing you up very agitated one Monday morning, or even worse still on a weekend, to a partner and saying, hey, I was in the pub or the club on Friday afternoon and I heard one of my competitors bragging from XYZ steel fabricators down the road that they've got a government grant and they're going off spending $20,000 of taxpayers' money and getting an apprentice on a certain basis. Isn't it far better that you as a firm are showing that you really do care about your clients and you are being proactive in identifying these resources of additional financial assistance, especially in these hard commercial times which we have at present. The other benefit, of course, is that some of this work your firm might be able to undertake. So half your fee will be getting paid by a government agency, and I like that. But your clients are all paying their taxes. There's nearly $5 billion per annum allocated around Australia by the state, territory and the federal government for grants, government loans and incentive payments. Shouldn't your clients be receiving their fair share of those funds as long as they are able to submit a worthwhile application? So then what you can say to the client is, we've done this, the application now needs to be done. We're happy to do the application for you, but we're going to start a new fee file and we're going to bill you for the work that's been undertaken to complete the the grant application, and at the end of that process we will also be interested in submitting a proposal to you to undertake some of the work. And the client can make a decision one of three ways. They can say, no, we're not interested in government grants, thank you very much. And in my experience, that will be less than 5% of your clients will say that. They are people who have got hang-ups about governments and nothing much you or I are going to be able to do to change their minds. The second answer is, and you will get it from some of your clients, oh, okay, thanks very much, I'll go home and have a look at that. Most of them will come back to you, in my experience, because they'll find the application process a bit too daunting. And obviously the third group are the people who are going to say, thank you very much. The other real benefit from you as the accountant is you're in control of all this process. If you decide to outsource it then to someone else, you're in control of the process. If your client goes off and hears about this in a pub or a club or finds it on the internet and does their own research, they're likely to go to someone else who, besides offering a grant application process, invariably are also offering tax return preparation work and preparation of annual accounts. And then you're likely to find that your client is being encouraged to switch their accounting and tax work to someone else. And one of the comments that might be made to them could be, well, your previous accountant couldn't identify the government grants for you. What else are they missing out on? These people we're sending you to can do that work. So I'll leave you that to think about. So grants, I believe, is a great way for you to start offering business advisory services to your clients. You're doing your clients a great service, and you're also potentially creating a new revenue stream of work coming in for your own business. So what I'm going to do now is go to see whether we've got any questions. I don't seem to have any questions yet. If you have a question, can you type it in and raise your hand? If you think of some questions later on that you would like to ask us, please don't hesitate to send me an email, peter@ESSBIZTOOLS.com.au, and we will get back to you. So at this stage, what we might show you is how you go about getting a 2-week trial of this system. So let me just go back into where we were, and we'll go back to the beginning where we can go on to pricing. So if you go onto our system, I probably should have gone to the home page first. I'll just go back to there. When you go to our home page, there's this box, Start Free Trial. So you can just click on that, and this will take you, and it's jumped ahead a bit, so we'll just go back so you can see what it is first of all. The free trial is for 2 weeks. It's free, of course. You can click onto there. You're then going to have to give us some details of who you are, and you are getting a 2-week trial. Our normal subscription is a yearly subscription of $450 plus GST. That gives you unlimited use of ESS BIZGRANTS within an office for as many authors as you have that need to use the system. The system benefits by new grants being populated throughout the year as grants become announced by the various governments in Australia, and that's happening all the time. Some grants are also withdrawn throughout the year. So that is all part of the subscription. Or you can pay in 12 monthly payments of $43 plus GST over the period. We also conduct a monthly webinar for subscribers when we go through and analyse some of the new grants that have been issued, so as to assist you to be an expert in understanding government grants without having to do all the hard yakka of finding the details and reading the material yourself. You can read our summary notes, and we believe they will assist you to duly deliver the service that your clients are looking for. So in the first instance, I'd urge you all to take advantage of our free trial. It is meant for you just to become familiar with it and see that it will work for your clients. So process 2 or 3 of your clients, see how it works, and then please, we'd love you to register. You can do so with 12 monthly subscriptions or one upfront payment of $495, which obviously includes GST. Okay, I've got no questions, so thank you very much for participating in this webinar today. We will be sending you a post-webinar questionnaire. We would appreciate it if you can complete that. We'll take about 1 minute and send that back to us. I apologise once again for my croaky voice today. I have got sinus, but I hope you've heard enough of what I've had to say to understand the real benefit that a product like ESS BIZGRANTS can bring to an accountancy practice to enable you to be very proactive in the delivery of additional services to your small, medium enterprise clients. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.